Hi there. Today I'm looking at the game between a player, and forgive me if I mispronounce his last name, Kazhgaleyev, with the white pieces, rated 25.89 at the time, versus our current world champion, Magnus Carlsen, who's rated 28.37 at the time. This game is from the World Rapid Finals and took place on June 7th, 2012. Here we go. E4 from Kazhgaleyev, E5 from Magnus, Knight f3, Knight c6, Bishop c4, and Bishop c5. A lot of people wonder what's the difference between this move Bishop c4, which constitutes what's known as the Italian game or Giuoco Piano, and Bishop b5, known as the Roy Lopez, or which move is better. Uh, Historically, this move, Bishop b5, is taking precedence over Bishop c4 due to one of the simple um, aspects in chess, in that the move Bishop b5 actually threatens something here, and it actually puts pressure on the black position. In this case, the simple idea is to remove the defender of the e5 pawn. Now, of course, we know that after a6, which was attributed to Morphy, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, knight takes e5, that tactically the e pawn cannot be readily captured because of this move right here, threatening the knight on e5 and the pawn on e4 at the same time. So this is why we get this move. Excuse me. After b takes d takes, normally we get this right here, and now the pawn is legitimately threatened. But anyway, not to get into a long discussion on the Roy Lopez, the point is that the move Bishop b5 inherently is more powerful. Now, there's certain reasons for playing different openings, of course, preferences, and likes and dislikes of certain positions and setups, so on and so forth. But as far as just which move is better, like it's actually stronger or doing more in the position, we'll say it like that. We'll say Bishop b5. Bishop b5 keeps black on his toes. Black has to uh, think defensively a little while longer, and that's why the Spanish opening is Roy Lopez, um, is also known in some lines as Spanish torture, because black has to be on his P's and Q's for a long time, the inferior position for a very long time, sometimes 20 and 30 moves of theory. So note with Bishop c4, which is playing again the Giuoco Piano, although it's a good solid opening, Bishop develops, right? Castling is prepared. It's on an open diagonal. It's putting pressure on the weakest square in f2. And there's some lines, like your two knights defense. You get knight g5 with this attack on f7. The move itself at this moment doesn't really threaten anything. In other words, black can do whatever he wants in this position. And sometimes black will play knight f6, which constitute the two knights defense, or bishop c5, going into the Giuoco Piano. So in this game, Carlsen chose Giuoco Piano. You don't really see two knights defense that much played. c3, and of course we should know the idea is simply to create a two-pawn presence in the center after d4. In other words, if white could move again, he would just play d4, And after e takes d4, c takes d4, and have 2 pawns in the center. Black's job here is to try to restrict or try to hold back white's plans and ideas if possible. That's one of the main tenets of the opening. Not only are you fighting for the center, but in that fight for the center, you are trying to restrict and block typical plans and ideas from your opponent. Here, black is trying to limit or hinder the establishment of the 2-pawn center, at least a strong 2-pawn center, that is, for white. And we see here that one of the drawbacks of white's position is that this pawn on e4 is unprotected. Therefore, it gives black the perfect opportunity. Remember, this bishop is not here, and so therefore this pawn is quite secure at the moment. This knight is not being attacked, and therefore black can do something very constructive. Instead of being on the defense, he can actually attack with a threat. Plays knight f6. Now white has to consider what to do about this pawn. There's many moves that are played here. d4 can be played, even b. Some troubles for black. So d3 is played, solidifying the support on e4, castle, and Kazhgaleyev plays bishop b3, and bishop b3 is has several ideas to it. One of the main ideas is just to try to preserve this bishop from being picked off, not in this particular position, but at some point being picked off by a move like knight a5 and a quick trade of the bishop. Of course, right now, if the knight was to move, this pawn would be captured. So bishop b3, d6, and now we can see that if knight a5 were to occur, then the bishop would just move away in Roy Lopez fashion to the c file. So after d6, h3 is played. This is a restriction-based move, trying to make black's development arduous. So the bishop would like to go here and come out on a natural square. Now really, it's a little bit of trouble. You really don't want to put the bishop here, because it's not really developed. I mean, it's developed in the raw sense of the definition, but is that really where you want the piece to go? Probably not. Here, we can see it will be captured. Same here. And here, you might not want your pawn structure compromised so early in the game. So, knight e7. Again, this idea is based on the fact that d4 is not really feasible right now for white. So for instance, if d4, notice this pawn is free to be captured. So after, say for instance, bishop b6, d takes e5, there it is, knight takes e4, castle. And the reason castles is played instead of this is because this pawn is threatened by the knight here and the bishop here on b6. So castles and d takes e5, and the game is equal. Black has succeeded in destroying white center. He has no problems at this point. We could even say black is a little better because he has his e-pawn in the center. But after that, what will happen next is knight takes e5, of course, and then simply queen takes d1. And of course, not rook takes d1 because of the f2 square, but bishop takes d1. And this is not what white signed up for. If e takes d4, c takes d4, bishop b4, and bishop d2, for instance. And white center is a little weak, even though this line is a little bit better for white. The idea of this is if knight c3, then of course knight takes e4. But bishop d2 holds things together for white. But instead, you would just play bishop b6. and destroy the center. So white played castle and knight g6. So this knight makes the transfer over. And the thing about this transfer is that the knight is accomplishing the same thing it was doing on c6 over on g6, and that is defending the e-pawn, defending the king side, and now there's even a chance of it coming to f4 in some lines. Sometimes you get these type of setups going on. Furthermore, the knight leaving c6 unblocks the c7 pawn. So now we can get scenarios of c6 and then moving in the center with d5, which of course is a major idea in these open games. Knight bd2. Here bishop g5 is possible, but another facet of the knight being here is that it guards the h4 square. So after bishop g5 trying to initiate a pin, h6 makes it impossible for black just to go back here. You just lose the bishop here. So that transfer, remember that idea, the transfer from c6 to g6 with the knight. Very good idea in this opening. So knight bd2, c6, just like I said. d4, white strikes first in the center. Simply just bishop b6. There's no reason for black to allow white this two-pawn center, so he just retreats the bishop. He's not giving up his center. Rook e1, rook e8, bishop c2, and we see some similar ideas to the Ruy Lopez, the transfer of the bishop from a4 to c2. h6, knight f1, and that knight's going to go to g3. Sometimes it goes to e3. But the idea is to land on the f5 square. Analogous idea for black is for him, as I shown earlier, put one of his knights on f5. Knight h5, and there it is. Knight e3, knight h, f4, knight f5. So both players are jockeying for position. Queen f6, good move. Now g3. Now you might look at this and say, hey, white has made a blunder. And yes, he has, but it's not an obvious blunder. Let me show you the idea behind this move. So g3 was played, of course, to kick the knight out, but the pawn sack was intentional. So after knight takes h3, here's the main idea. King g2, and now if the knight goes back to g5, then the idea is knight takes g5, h takes g5. Note the queen cannot capture because of the bishop on c1. And then queen h5. And the idea is very simple, and that's just to swing this rook over here to h1, creating all kind of difficulties. The other threat, immediate threat, is bishop takes g5. So here black is pretty much lost. So Magnus Carlsen will be lost in this position. So that was the idea. So he's not just Kazhgaleyev is very strong. He's almost 2600. So he's not just blundering a pawn there. Knight takes h3, king g2 from Kazhgaleyev. I'm sorry, I'm saying the representing the colors wrong. Magnus is black here, g3. So knight takes h3 is played. King g2, and Kazhgaleyev is is, looking at this line right here, knight g5, knight takes, h takes, queen h5, where he would be winning. However, Magnus Carlsen saw a little deeper, and knight takes h3, king g2, and I gave it away already. He played this very strong move, d5, striking in the center. The idea being, after king takes h3, then d takes e4, and we have the bishop and queen on this knight right here, as well as the knight on f3 being on priest. So black would get the piece back and then some. So therefore, after d5, Kazhgaleyev played d takes e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, f4, and he still can't capture that piece for the same reasons. So f4, attacking the rook. Magnus parts with the exchange. Rook takes e4, bishop takes e4, and here's a nice move from Magnus, a nice in-between move. He plays knight f2, attacking the queen and the bishop. Queen h5, knight takes e4. So knight h4 to protect the knight. Bishop d7, bishop e3, and the rest is, as they say, just a matter of technique. Magnus is up several pawns for the exchange. G takes f4, rook e1, of course, if g takes, and just simply queen takes f4. So queen g7, opposing the king. Queen h4, and Magnus goes right into the endgame. Queen takes g3 check, queen takes g3, f takes, knight d4, and the pawns are just going to be pushed. h1, bishop g4, rook ae1, king g7, knight e2, knight f2, rook takes h5, bishop takes h5, knight to g3, knight d3, and Magnus just has too much material. King g6, I like this move actually, king g6 here, because the rook is on prise also if he tries to save his knight. So now both pieces are attacked here, the rook and the knight. So he tries to save the day here with rook h1, but then after rook h8 is a pin, and that is a wrap. And again, one last final trick. If white tries to get slick and play knight to f4 check, then Magnus just simply captures knight f4, and that's with check. And then he picks up this rook anyway. So with that, Kazhgaleyev resigned. So that was a good game by Magnus. I hope you enjoyed that. That was a heck of a combination there. And you can't really blame, it's hard to blame white for playing this move, g3. It's a natural move that occurs in tons of similar positions. But it just shows you that, the level that Carlsen is on. He just saw like one step ahead. Because I'm sure that Kazhgaleyev saw that this idea and figured that he was just, going to get that victory over Magnus. And when Magnus played d5, he probably was like, oh, man. So, anyway, like, and subscribe. I hope you learned something on that video, and I will see you on the next one.